Hi, folks, and welcome to another review, badly done, about Richard Lehman and ranking his books in order. We're at number 26 today, and you'll be delighted to know that there are no more, at least no more in my opinion, bad books to talk about. From now on, the next group of books that I want to discuss are all books that I'm kind of on the fence about. They're all sort of okay, mixed, middling books. None of these are what I'd call good books. They're not essential reads, and if you never read them in your life, you're not really missing anything. But if you're a fan of Richard Lehman, these books are probably going to be books that you'll at least want to read once, just so you've experienced them. None of them are bad, and for whatever reason, they all find themselves in this sort of middle pile of this list, where they're all sort of all right, for whatever reason. Potentially, some of these could have been pretty good if another author had written them, but I'll explain why as we go through. So, at number 26, I'm starting off this middle sort of tier ranking with a 1984 book called Night Show. Now, Night Show is a book that focuses on a special effects queen. Her name's Danny Larson. I remember her name. She's one of the few Lehman characters that I actually remember her name. And she's a special effects queen of horror films. So she's like the female version of Tom Savini. And I mean, Tom Savini and a few others are actually name dropped in this story. She creates practical effects for horror films. It's her job. And the book has quite a few depictions of behind the scenes horror movie making and creating special effects and gore scenes and stuff, which I really liked. It showcases that Lehman, he was a big fan of horror stuff, and he knew what he was talking about. And it really does bring up a sort of a good depicting scene of behind the scenes making a horror film. So I really like that sort of stuff. Anyway, she becomes the target of this teenage guy who wants to make it into Hollywood. He's a horror fanatic. He loves scaring people and playing pranks, and he decides that he's going to terrorize her until she becomes terrified of him. And when she is terrified of him, he's then going to try to become her sort of protege. He wants to learn everything there is to know about horror films from her because he thinks she's the best in the business. And while he's doing that, he starts to develop a unhealthy and unwholesome obsession with her. Now, she's in a relationship with a co-worker who does not like this guy at all. He can see that he can see that this other guy's a creep. But Danny Larson, for whatever reason, despite the fact that every instinct tells you she should call the cops on this guy, kind of feels sorry for him, and he's sort of very obvious fake sob stories. I mean, the guy's an obsessive liar, very manipulative and sly, and she basically falls for it and decides she's going to take him under her wing and teach him stuff. And all the while, he's sort of insidiously worming his way into her life and becoming more and more sort of obsessive and strange. That part of the story I didn't mind. I mean, this is a very short book. It's one of Lehman's early stories, and all of Lehman's early books are pretty short, to be honest. The whole horror effects and stuff I quite like, and the scene and atmosphere of it was pretty good. But what drew me out of the story a bit was Danny's. In fact, what draws me out of the story the most, the reason why this book's sort of like at 26 and not like higher up on the list, is the fact that Danny's just such a gullible character who constantly believes what this guy is saying when everyone else knows that he's scum. There's a second story here, how the story starts off with this other girl who, when she was a teenager, she fell to this prank that these three guys play on her, which results in her ending up in a coma. And I'm not quite sure about the time frame from when she wakes up to when she decides she's going to carry on with her side of the story. How long time's been? It could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be longer. Time in this book is really hard to pinpoint because it just seems a bit all over the place. Could do with another sort of rewrite, really. But she basically becomes a victim of a prank, and one of these guys that pranked her is this main creep that's hanging around with Danny Larson. And there's two other guys involved, but they've kind of forgotten this incident after this point. She wakes up from this coma, pretends she doesn't have any memory of what's happened, is released, but really she does remember what's happened, and her focus is on tracking these boys down and killing them. And how she tracks them down and the way in which she disposes of them is actually pretty good. She's quite a good anti-hero. She's very cold and calculating, but you're sort of rooting for her. Apart from the fact that what they did was a prank that went wrong, and their reasons for pranking her was that she's attractive and she's not into them, I guess. It was a very silly juvenile thing to do, but they didn't actually cause any injury to her. The way in which she gets hurt is a complete accident, and it's nothing really to do with them. It's an indirect result of what they've done. But she has decided she's going to commit murder. And I don't know what we're meant to think about it, because on the one hand, yes, I can understand why she wants to get revenge on people that have left her in a coma and not cared or anything. At the same time, murder seems a bit harsh. If she told people what had happened, perhaps she could have got the authorities on board and given them some sort of other punishment other than tracking them down to murder them. Especially considering two of these guys are quite remorseful, and the way in which she kills them is quite awful. And I kind of like the whole sort of murder scenes and the way in she's tracking them down, but at the same time, I just think it's a bit unnecessary. She's like I say, she's trying to kill people, which seems to be a bit harsh. But these two stories sort of go back and forth in a slightly awkward manner, but it's quite fast paced, and then it culminates with this girl tracking down this guy and what's going to happen. I think the resolution's pretty good. I think that, it definitely ends as it should have ended, and it's a fast read with some nice sort of nostalgic references to 80s cinema and horror. It's just a shame that some of the characters, especially the main character, is so dense and kind of throws you out in the story. It's just frustrating that she just doesn't realise what's going on with this guy who's creepy and unpleasant. And at the same time, the other part of the story where this girl's tracking down these guys and murdering them kind of leaves a bit of a bitter aftertaste, because I understand she's upset, but murder seems a bit harsh. I don't know, the rest of it, I think it's an all right book. It's an okay, short, fast read. Just the things I've mentioned kind of bog it down a bit, because it's not as good as it potentially could have been, really. But it's an okay book, so it's at number 26. That's Night Show.